Hey guys, and welcome back. So today we are talking about a case that I've heard about many times before, but I never really got into it. But the more I heard of it, the more interested I got, and that is the case of the Richardson family. So people were very surprised about what happened with the Richardson family because they were such like a loving and normal family for such a horrific crime until they eventually found out that it was the family's own daughter who was responsible for it. So pretty much Jasmine Richardson, who was the family's 12-year-old daughter, was the one who masterminded the whole entire murder of her family. She even killed her own little brother with a knife before running away. But first, let's talk about a little bit about Jasmine and Jeremy. So Jasmine was 12-year-old and she lived in Canada with her family. Her victim was her father Mark, her mother Deborah, and her baby brother Jacob. She had a little bit of like an online personality. So online she said that she was 15 years old. She described herself as a Wiccan. She was a little awkward, insane, and nocturnal type of person, or at least that's how she described herself with like her online personality. She was pretty into like criminal stuff, poetry, criminal psychology, very dark stuff. She was also weirdly interested in like kinky stuff and human anatomy, and weirdly enough, she was very interested in blood. So everything was pretty much normal with Jasmine until she started dating a 23-year-old who was the boyfriend. His name was Jeremy. So later down the line, her family prohibited for her to see Jeremy. Obviously, you have a teenager dating a 23-year-old. Like, what kind of parents would allow that, weirdly enough? So because she was not allowed to see her boyfriend, or at least not in public, or too obvious, then that's when she thought, okay, so I'm gonna kill my own family. I need your help. So Jeremy was a very weird 23-year-old who described himself to be a 300 years werewolf. To be honest with you, something was just not okay with Jeremy. He liked the taste of blood, and weirdly enough, he even had a little vial of blood hanging around his neck. So Jeremy had an account on Vampire Freaks and listed some of his interests as like blood and razors, pain, kinky fetishes, and other weird things. As they continued to talk and, get to know each other, that's when she was not allowed to see him. So she basically wrote to him, I have a plan, and it begins with me killing them, and it ends with me living with you. Now, this is like where it gets a little weird because you have two people who are completely into weird kinky stuff, who like blood, who like vampires and things like that. But in the other hand, then you question, like, how does a 12-year-old just decide, hey, I'm gonna kill my parents so I can escape with my boyfriend? Like, yeah, at least in my opinion, like a normal 12-year-old would go as far as like, yeah, I'm gonna skip school, or I'm gonna say I'm with a friend. But no, they went as far as like as actually wanting to kill them. To which he replied with, I actually wrote it on my phone. Payment. My lover's friends are completely unfair. They say they really care. They don't know what's going on, they assume. As their greed continues to consume, she is slowly going insane. She continues to think that I came into her life to help her out and to stop what they're trying to keep to shut. It is total bullshit. Their throat I want to slit. They will regret the shift they have done, especially when I see to that they're gone. They shall pay for their insolence. Finally, there shall be silence. Their blood shall be payment. So, as we could see in this relationship, there was not a thing as like a submissive partner. Sometimes when people kill in like couples, there's always one that has like kind of like the idea, and the other one is still like, like I don't really know. Do I really want to? Do I not? And then the other one is like, yes, like let's do it. We have to. Kind of like force it into the other person. But in this case, she came up with the plan and he followed. So one of their favorite movies was Natural Born Killers. Coincidence? And it was actually the movie that they watched the night before murdering her family.
Commercial break. Commercial break. Commercial break.
So on April 22nd of 2006, Jeremy basically killed the mother and the father while Jasmine was distracting her little brother. So Jacob was basically in the second floor of their home, and then he went as far as actually telling Jasmine that he wanted her to stab her own little brother. He wanted her to stab her baby brother, which of course she said yes to. Poor little Jacob was basically begging for his life when Jasmine actually took the decision of, following Jeremy's order and actually stabbing her baby brother. So she pretty much stabbed him in the chest, and then apparently that was not enough for Jeremy because he slit his throat. So after the murders, Jeremy and Jasmine decided to play it low-key, you could say. They decided to part their ways for a little bit. So Jeremy pretty much decided that he was gonna go back home, while Jasmine took a cab to a little 7-Eleven. So she pretty much just like grabbed food, killed time, and then 3 hours later she decided to head home back to Jeremy's, but she actually went walking just to kill a little bit more time than normal. So it's presumed that she walked for like about 2 hours. They show absolutely no remorse whatsoever, and they even went out to eat to a restaurant after murdering. Some people who saw them apparently even claimed that some people even claimed like to see them laughing and touching hands and just interacting like a normal couple, like nothing had happened. So like that's what makes people feel like none of them felt remorse. Like I would understand killing your parents and being in the heat of the moment, but it takes a different type of person to feel no remorse after murdering your own family hours later. Like after like reality kind of kicks in, like you have to feel something, but apparently they felt nothing. They were pretty much happy with the decisions they took. So the day after the murder, one of Jacob's, who was the baby brother, one of his friends was supposed to come over for a little play date. So as he went to see if Jacob was home, he knocked on the door, he rang the bell, nobody answered. But he saw through the window, and that's when he decided to go back home and tell his mom that something was not okay, because he saw a body laying through the window, and at first he wasn't like so sure on what he saw, so he just told the mom like, hey, I think I saw a body through the window. So his mom was basically the person who called the police. A detective whose name was Brent came to the crime scene, and he pretty much just stood up right where Jacob was, and he saw through the window as well, and he realized that he was right, there was actually a body laying there. But he decided not to go in until he called for backup. So as they're investigating this crime scene, they believe that the mom was actually the one that was killed first, and she was actually stabbed many times. And the dad, whose name was Mark, was found next. He was actually laid in the basement, and because of the way his body was positioned and because of like marks that he had, it is believed that he actually tried to like put on a fight. So he actually tried to like fight back with like a screwdriver. And of course little Jacob was found last, as we know, stabbed in the chest, throat was cut. But of course Jasmine was missing, and at the time they knew nothing. But you see her whole family laying on the floor, killed. So they were absolutely worried and mortified, so they decided to put Amber Alert because she was 12 and nowhere to be found. The police later found Jasmine's messages with her boyfriend, like the messages that they had in their accounts online. And on April 24th, they were finally arrested for the murder of the family. They also show absolutely no remorse when they were caught. Instead, they kissed and they cuddled and they laughed. So while in jail, they continued to talk to each other, and they will always write to each other, like sending each other's messages, and that was their way of communicating. So later, Jeremy proposed to Jasmine, which she said yes to. And they would pretty much believe that they were legends in the prison. They would always brag about how they're murdering the family, which is really weird. And they would call each other like legends and immortal and things like that. So a friend of Jeremy was also arrested. She was 19 at the time, and she was arrested because she was pretty much accessory to murder. So she basically drove them in her truck after they killed the family, and she helped them dispose of evidence. But her charges pretty much dropped, and she only ended up doing like a year of like house arrest. So Jasmine Richardson was actually never fairly entreated by her parents. She was given opportunities that some of the kids, to be honest, never would get. One of her friends that knew her from time ago described her as very understanding and decent and outgoing. She used to be the type of person who was like gentle and kind to her friends. She would even go as far as like making efforts to make people feel welcome. Her mom was practicing Reiki for some years, and that's when Jasmine pretty much declared herself as like a Wicca. So at 11, that's when she took like on like her personality. Like she wasn't like that happy, smiling little girl that she used to be. She was dressing all black. She was wearing black makeup. She started hanging out with like older guys, and she became sexually active. But Jeremy, on the other hand, he was highly abused by his parents. Bully and Stinky was his nickname. He was pretty much picked on because his mom used to be an alcoholic, and he lived in very poor condition. So his father had left him, and his mom was very quick to replace him. He used to be around guys that were drunk and were abusive and that would hit him. To the point where one of the guys actually tied him to a chair and would make him watch him doing things to other kids. So it wasn't just that he was getting things done, but he had to see other kids getting other things done to them as well. You know, by 15, who could blame him? He was already a cutter and an alcoholic. Hi, baby. So their trial started on June of 2007. And, you know, Jasmine was asked why she killed her family. She pretty much said that she was in a zombie-like state and that Jeremy was the one who wanted to kill the family. She also said at the end that she was joking around wanting to kill her family, that she never actually meant it, which is not true. But on July 1st, she was found guilty of all 3 charges. So she was pretty much sentenced to 10 years in prison, and her sentence was supposed to be followed for like 4 years in a mental institution. So in November of 2008, Jeremy went to trial as well, and he was pretty much sentenced to 3 life sentences. But he was eligible for parole after serving 25 years. He was asked why he killed the family, and he pretty much said, like, when you find your soulmate, there's nothing you wouldn't do for them. So during the last few months of her sentence, Jasmine started attending college. She stopped doing time and she was released from the mental facility in 2011, and that's when she actually expressed remorse for the murder of her family. Now, this whole case is insane. I generally did not think a 12-year-old would think of killing her whole family and actually going through with it. Maybe wish for it, but actually having the guts to do it, I feel like is a whole different story. Especially taking the decision of not only asking for it, because of course Jeremy was the one that killed the mom and the dad, but actually going as far as like stabbing your own little brother. In a way or two, like if you really think of it and you examine like their backgrounds, they just seem like really lonely and sad people. Especially Jeremy. Obviously, like we know how he grew up, and those situations that he was put on was not easy to deal with. It never justified what he did, but you kind of more expected from him. But from her, she was just like in those ages where you want to do whatever you want because you think you're your own boss and you're growing up. But she took it to a whole another level. She took teenage genes like on steroids. You know, like pretty much completely destroy their lives with their actions and decisions, even though she went to college and everything. But I do hope that now that she has returned to normal life, she's doing better.